All right, we need an open, and then we're going to bring Josh back on for After Dark. And you did win the show. Let's see if Josh can win the show from you. All right? See if you can...
That might be difficult.
To win the show from you?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
That's kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah, it's frozen on your...
It's frozen on your face that way, apparently.
Yeah. Everywhere?
Apparently.
All right, hang on.
Apparently!
I'll fix it. I'll fix it. I'll fix it. I'm a fixer.
Oh my God! Look.
Oh, nice. Guess, I guess that's how I can afford one, finally.
Yeah. You can't fit into that one either.
Yeah, I can't.
So for those of you watching After Dark, apparently I somehow lost the live stream, which is annoying.
And I also just lost chat.
Really?
Yeah, the timer is frozen and I can't scroll.
Oh yeah, so I definitely see.
Oh, I forgot to. Oh well.
I'll just go ahead and stop that. Go live again. Am I frozen everywhere or just on YouTube?
Oh my God! Robert Zubrin is on Twitter.
Does he type in? I feel like he would type in all caps all the time.
Yeah, I was about to say, are we sure this is something that we want to follow?
I did an interview with Robert Zubrin once for Moon and Back, and it was actually very awkward because he started crying during it.
What?
Yeah, he was very passionate about what he was talking about, and I was feeling it. I was just like, yeah, preach to him, man. But it was also very awkward at the same time.
This is awkward.
And we published it, so...
All right, did everyone get their video and stuff back? Are we good on YouTube? And was it only YouTube? Boop.
Oh, apparently we're back.
Yay. All right, we need to do an open.
Okay.
Return
of the Dragon.
Okay, Return of the Dragon. I don't remember the order. Hang on. Hang on.
Hang on.
What do you want to do? You were next.
I'll say there's more planets out there.
Okay.
More exoplanets. Or Return of Kepler. I don't know. Since you're saying Return of the Dragon, I could say Return of Kepler.
And the return of the decline of the return of the engines.
And Return of the Battle of the Senators.
Revenge of the Engines.
Revenge of the engines, or Revenge of the Senator? Revenge of the Senators? And then
Depends on who wins the fight.
Wait, so you're going to say...
no one wins this fight, by the way.
So what are you saying, Mike?
Return of the Dragon.
Okay, I'll say something like A New Hope for Exoplanets.
Ooh.
And I'll say a Phantom Menace. All right. And a Phantom
And there's
Menace.
something wrong in the Senate.
And there's something wrong in the Senate. You are seriously winning this show. Oh my
I'm
God.
on fire today.
You are on fire.
I'm on fire!
And then, Carrie Ann, can you do the plus? We talked to Josh Richards.
What was I supposed to say again? Oh, there's a New Hope for Exoplanets.
about Mars One. Mars One candidate about something like that.
You want me to say that we talked to a Mars One candidate about Mars One? Do you
No.
actually want me to use this voice in our open anyway?
I do want you to use that voice, but I don't want you to use the words I just used.
Okay.
Do you have a better way to do it?
No, not really.
Plus, we talked to a Mars One candidate about a one-way trip.
1 and 1.
Oh, it's shaking.
Somebody's doing laundry downstairs.
Plus, we talked to a Mars One candidate. Plus, we talked to a Mars One candidate.
I'm sure, I can come up with
Plus, we
something.
talked to Josh Richards, a Mars One candidate. All right.
Yes.
What am I saying? There's trouble brewing in the Senate. There's trouble in the Senate. What am I? Well, there's trouble in the Senate. That's my line.
Something like that.
All right.
Right?
I see we've lost caring, so let's go ahead and get this going.
So
All
what
right.
order are we going in?
It's Space Mike, you, me, Carrie, and me.
Rock and roll.
Or actually, do we all want to do Tomorrow Begins right now?
We can
No?
try.
All right, just me? Just me.
Scared people last time.
You did it? All right, so just me. All right, so here we go. And give me a coming up mic as well.
Oh, me do the coming up? Okay.
Yep.
Coming up, Return of the Dragon.
A New Hope for Exoplanets.
I forgot my line.
You were the chosen one!
Yes, yes.
Battle of the Senate? A battle in the Senate. There we go. A battle in the Senate.
John McCain Strikes Back?
No, a battle in the Senate.
You're writing it down.
I failed, so yeah. All right.
good
Here's
call.
number two.
Coming up, Return of the Dragon.
A New Hope for Exoplanets.
A battle is brewing in the Senate.
And we have a respectable talk with Josh Richards about Mars One.
Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now.
You're
does
breaking
begin.
my heart.
Yeah, it's kind of.
All right. I think that was good, right? We were happy. Should we dump Mike and bring back Josh?
It's funny, the chat room was just talking about it. Space Mike always gets dumped. I'll see you guys later then. Well, is he coming back? Is he confirmed coming back?
Yeah, he's confirmed coming back. We'll give him a call. Any final comments before we let you go this week?
I don't think so. I have Space Pod this week that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to keep it a surprise. You guys will just have to find out what it's all about on Wednesday. And,
Ooh.
All right. I'm just going to say that the bar has been raised by Mini Stoge.
Mini Stoge keeps raising the
Which
bar.
is funny
Which is
because
funny
she's so
because of how short
short.
she is. She's on her tippy toes.
I wonder, Mini Stooge must have a Napoleon complex.
She doesn't though.
Just kidding. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's hilarious. Because she's tiny.
She's tiny.
She's so small.
She's so
Johnny
small.
boy.
So small.
I love your comments.
All right.
Space Mike is the expendable
Hang
stage
up on
of
him.
the show. Glad I was able to boost you guys.
Thanks.
Bye, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Ugh, my ear.
It bugs your ear?
Well,
I'm pretty cool with it.
I mean, it's just in my ear for so long, and I have teeny tiny. So you have like big floppy Dumbo ears. I have teeny tiny ears. So what? Are we all dancing?
Oh, is it dance
I'm
time?
No. You need to play
Just 'cause
music.
I
Play
can. I was
music.
excited.
Play some music.
Play the music.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up a quit or fumble it.
Looking very serious there, Carrie Ann.
Some expectation. This girl's a fascination. Nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire.
Get the GIFs going.
She's fire. Walking when it's hot, she keeps on moving. The heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire.
Who's called for Crazy Eyes? So
That is really hard to do for that long. I'm actually winded.
I'm tired.
It's obviously about me. There's no need for me to dance. That's ridiculous.
Oh my god. Woo! Colton, is Josh? Josh, are you in the chat room?
I've closed everything down now.
Okay, that's all good. Colton was asking if you needed in the special hosts room. I was going to say no. Did we want to just start going through some of these backlogged questions and see? By the way, do you, can I put you on the spot and do you have like any Mars One jokes or Mars jokes that you can just like one line off? So here's the thing. Jared won the show by being funny, and I want you to take his throne. Yeah.
I do love talking about how we can potentially, like, we're not going to be recycling anything on the way to Mars. So one of the things that we've talked about is using solid human waste as radiation shielding. So I might actually be going to Mars in a spaceship covered in poop. So that's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
/ gross.
So ironically, you're not full of shit. The shit is full of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the space,
Soviet swap.
I'm just checking.
the vehicle's full of shit as well. So
The vehicle's full of shit,
Or Mars One is.
but the shit is
Boom.
full of you.
That's my little. So which one? We had different hashtags. We we were using for the show. So we had Mars None, which was a clever play on words. What were the other ones we had here, Dada? We have I can't read that one from here. Forgot my toothbrush. Wouldn't that suck? That's a good one. What else do we have?
Evil Mars base.
Evil Mars base. I like that one because when I go to Mars, I want my evil Mars base. Did that one make it to air?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What else do we have?
Mars or bust.
Mars or bust. Okay, that one's okay.
NASA has that on one of their shirts, though.
Mars or bust.
I wore the shirt on air in this season. Otherwise, I would have worn it for the show.
Oh, all right. Hashtag one-way trip. That one's a simple one. What else we got? Anything else? Oh, Jesus, I can't read that.
It brings a whole new meaning to get your ass to Mars, though, I suppose.
I guess.
Make Pluto great again.
Make,
Look, I didn't make these.
I just threw that one in there. Make Pluto great
That's
again.
because
I like
it's funny.
That's for you. That's for you. Dude, we got to get it back its planetary status. All right. Anything else, or is that the last one?
Can we get like a Pluto 1 mission going and send Ben on his way?
To the planet Pluto? To the planet
Cold,
Pluto?
dead celestial dwarf.
Water tastes terrible.
He said dwarf. He said dwarf. That's correct.
No.
Very good job. Very good job.
The planet Pluto. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some of these. You want to hit the blue ones? What do you want to do?
Whatever you want to do.
Just start going back through some of them and see whatever's relevant and grab them.
Do you have any insight into the idea? Like, our general understanding when Mars One first announced was the whole reality show in space. Is that still a thing? And do you have any insight into that?
This has kind of been an evolving,
right?
Yeah, this has been a bit of an evolving idea. The initial concept was that they would, not Big Brother in space, but they wanted to try and make a reality TV show out of it. They weren't going to be setting us stupid challenges or anything like that, but they did want to broadcast it. That,
Like, you need to be sent stupid challenges.
Life-threatening challenges will be
Yeah.
sent to you by space itself. Don't you need to worry about that.
So we're going to
Yeah.
open the airlock, and you guys have 3 minutes to collect all these flags.
So it was never along those lines, but they were talking about it being quite a reality TV show type thing initially. The focus now has shifted away. They had Paul Romer involved, who's actually the guy that started Big Brother. He was one of our early advisors. He, as far as I know, is not with Mars One anymore. And the focus has shifted away from reality TV more to documentary series. I know they're looking at partnerships with people like Curiosity Stream and other kind of online video streaming services that would produce this stuff as a documentary. The idea being you watch each stage of our training.
But part of it was, the initial business plan was the television rights for this were going to pay for a good chunk of it, right? Because, you know, it was brought up like the price of, or the cost of advertising on the Olympics or the Super Bowl or something like that, or both, I don't remember which.
You know, it's the 2012 London Olympics that they used the costings for initially.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that makes sense, but it sounds like that everything is getting kind of scaled back, which means what happens to that? Is that business model now dead, or is it?
So they've actually got about 6 different business models. It's not, that sounds wrong. They've got 6 different potential revenue streams as part of their business model. So the reality TV side of things is one aspect of that. Private investment is another. Selling technology rights is another. There's a whole raft of different ways that they could raise money. The focus was very much on the TV rights initially, and that's what the media picked up on. But actually mostly, again, I don't know much about the finance side of things, but I know that the focus for BUS is primarily private investment at this stage because there's nothing to televise yet.
You say on a live internet show. Just point that out. I would like to get, just so you know, I'd like to get the naming rights to the kitchen. And I want to make sure that anytime someone walks into the kitchen, they have to call it the Kitchen of Tomorrow and reference our show, because I think some of the most hilarious and awesome things are going to happen with food in space.
Yes.
Or the bathroom, one of the two. Maybe we need to, actually, we should get the naming rights, both the kitchen and the bathroom.
Sure. That's great.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Are we going to call it the Throne of Tomorrow?
All right, what else you got?
Oh goodness. I'm guessing that there's a lot of things in here that you can't really speak to.
Just say I can't speak to that then.
No, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
no
No, but
problem.
like even I'm reading this, going, well, yeah, because it says something in Wikipedia, and who effing knows who said anything in Wikipedia about anything? Like that's not like.
So the
And
Wikipedia
Valerium says
entry for Mars
Wikipedia
one-
states that the first 3 colonists will go to Mars in a Falcon Heavy in a modified Dragon capsule. How will they survive in a Dragon on the way to Mars? Like, you can say anything in Wikipedia. That's a
So for reference, there's a lot of graphics that use Dragon capsules in Mars One's kind of promotional material, because when it was first designed, that's what they were talking about. As far as I know, most of the discussions are actually with Lockheed Martin. There is, as far as I know, no relationship with SpaceX whatsoever, but those images were initially developed by the graphic artist that works for Mars One a couple of years ago when SpaceX was very much on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, next up.
well. To be fair, and that gumdrop shape kind of looks like every other module for the most part.
I mean,
ever
there's a
made,
reason. Yeah,
ever.
there's a legit engineering reason why you have that gumdrop shape. So that is not an unreasonable shape for a capsule that will be landing on Mars.
Yeah, it's an ideal hypersonic shape. So
Yep.
yeah.
Going through the wispy atmosphere. The wispy atmosphere.
The wisps.
Can you speak anything? Jim Nobles is asking basically like, how long did the psychological interview last? Can you speak anything to that process in particular?
Yeah, sure. So the psych interview, it's easier to maybe compare this to the way that NASA selects people, so that it gives a bit more context, because there's a lot of really negative press about the psych interview side of things. NASA, in their last intake, I think had about 8,000 candidates that completed applications. In comparison, everyone throws around the 200,000 value for Mars One. We had 4,500 completed applications. So, a little bit more than half of what NASA had for their application. NASA doesn't have in-depth, hours-long psychological interview with hundreds of candidates. They narrow that group down to a group of, say, 50 to 100, and they sit them down for hours at a time. And that's what Mars One's talking about as well. What we did was essentially a screening process from the people who'd passed the medical, at about 663, I think we had, that passed the medical, down to the 100 that are still in the running. And from there, we'll undergo much further psychological interviewing. But it was basically a 15-minute interview asking 6 questions from a possible 8. Half of the questions were technical knowledge, like how much do you actually know about Mars One's architecture and what kind of resources will you have, blah, blah, blah. And 3 psychological questions. So the question I remember vividly was the last question they asked was, if you had an opportunity to come back to Earth after 3 years, would you take it? And basically anyone that said yes to that is no longer with the program, because that's not what they want. They want people who want to stay there to be colonists.
But what if you? I mean, how do you know the answer to that, though?
And that's actually how I answered. I've talked to, it's something I talk to. This tour that I'm doing is trying to meet as many Mars One candidates as I can, and I ask all of them the same thing: how did you answer the last question? Because for me, I turned around and sort of went, I would have spent 10 years training towards this. I would have spent 7 months getting there, all the risk, all of that hazard. I would hope that I wouldn't want to come back. But I also know from serving, particularly when I served with the British Commandos, we had a lot of young guys who would come in at the start of training dead set. It's like the British Commandos is the longest infantry training course in the world. It's 8 months long and it's just hell. We had all these young blokes coming in at the start who would turn around and go, yep, I'm going all the way through. I'm going to make sure I don't get injured. I'll be an original trooper, all this sort of thing. And they're going home after 3 or 4 weeks because it's just not for them. So I kind of said that in my interview. I said I would love to think that I would definitely not get on that rocket, but until I was living on Mars, I wouldn't know for sure.
Isn't that the fundamental flaw with the current Mars One plan, which is no one can know for sure, right? You can answer, no, I don't want to go home after 3 years. But exactly as you just said, you can have the intent. You can think that you want to be there, but then you get there and go, "Oh, I do not want to be here anymore." Right? That is a very
Well,
possible
but
thing.
but in theory, the other option there is that, like we were talking earlier in the show, of should you already be there, and maybe then NASA also gets there, or China, or or, right? And so then all these you're first, and that's great, and you've kind of set up your little colony.
Little tent.
Sure, but maybe there's other little tents, and maybe suddenly somebody creates an Uber service for Mars. At some point, you're going to go, all right, cool. I know I signed up for 3 years, you guys, and that's awesome. But I sort of feel like I'm getting, the short end of the stick where all these other people are coming and going, and I know I signed up for 3 years, but that was when we thought it was only going to be 3 years, or it was only,
But
you know what I'm saying?
there's no guarantee you could get a ride back on someone else. Let's just say, for example, SpaceX sends their Mars Colonial Transporter down there. They could already have all of those seats filled going back.
Yeah.
You may not have any opportunity
Sure.
to go back.
So you kill one of them, it's fine. But the point is,
Mental note, do not go to Mars with Carrie Ann.
Yeah, same here.
Oh!
Yeah.
Woo!
but you understand the idea is that, in theory, down the line, you
But you're
could
talking
get there.
weeks. This is not going to be easy. This is going to be life-altering,
I understand
really hard
why
stuff.
they're asking the question, and I understand the answer that they're looking for. But at the same time, there could be a time where not that much further down the road, right, that you get there, and after 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, suddenly there's like a shuttle system between Mars and Earth. Is Mars one going to go, no, I'm sorry, there's absolutely no way we're letting you off that rock?
No, of course.
Like, that's BS.
I think that's an unreasonable thing. I think what we're talking with Josh is after 3 weeks, right? You're in there, you think you're ready to do this, you think you're ready to do this 8-month program,
Sure.
and you go, oh, this was way harder than I thought it was going to be. What happens after 3 weeks? You don't want to be on Mars anymore.
But the idea is that the testing that we're doing is trying to replicate that as best we can while we're still here on Earth. That's why I got involved with High Seas. It's why I'm hoping to be involved with another simulation that's being talked about being built in Israel. The idea is to try and simulate this as best you can, to try and make it as close as possible, because the flip side with the commando side of things is you start the training and 3 weeks in you go, this isn't for me. The worst thing that could happen is you go all the way through the 8 months, get to the end, and then you get deployed to somewhere like Afghanistan, and then you find out that you don't want to be there.
Yeah.
So it's much better to filter people out early on and possibly have a risk where someone discovers when they're stuck there that this is the wrong place for them. It's much better to filter them out early. So,
What does the Mars colony look like to you? So we're 10 years down the road. You've landed, 10 years have passed. What does the colony look like to you now?
So first crew of 4's landed. You're looking at 2 supply modules, 2 access modules, and 2 life support units, and then the habitation units, the Caterpillars, the Bigelow units that we're talking about. In 10 years, again, I can see delays. Mars One's talking about sending a new crew every 26 months. A few weeks after the first crew launches, the supplies for the second crew launches. But there's a possibility there's something wrong with that second set of units, so they wouldn't send the second crew after 26 months. So after 10 years, I guess reasonably I could see us maybe having 3 crews there, maybe 4. That's being very realistic about delays and that sort of things. So you're talking about having, 6 to 8 Bigelow inflation units that we're living in, and they're all basically rigged up as best we can between them. Again, there might be complications. We might have to put a set of units off to one side and actually have it physically separated. The idea with all of this and the psychology behind it that we were talking about, they essentially want to send MacGyvers. They want to send 4 people that are a bit like Richard Dean Anderson's character who just improvise. They're put in shitty situations and they find their way out of it. So I don't know necessarily what it will look like, but it will be whatever we improvise.
So,
Have you read The Martian?
So funny story with The Martian, and Stodge knows about this. I was a TA on her course for ISU, and I left in the final week because 20th Century Fox wanted to lock me up in a box for 5 days to live like Mark Watney for the DVD release of The Martian. So yeah, I've read the book, I've seen the film way too many times. I'm probably more familiar with it than most people are.
Part of what Mars wants to do is colonize Mars. In order to, in my opinion, in order to be a true colony, it'll have to be self-sustaining. You can't constantly be taking water and food from Earth, because now you're relying on, the other planet. If we stop shipments, your colony dies. Are there any plans for Mars One to be totally self-sustaining? Food, water,
that's
air,
the goal.
all of it. And
That's
is there
the final
a timeline, or is that just kind of we'll figure it out as we go along?
So the more self-sufficient we become, the more secure we are. It's not just a case of, there's an inherent safety. If we can provide our own supplies, if there is some sort of interruption, if there is some sort of fault that means that a supply module doesn't get to us, we're still safe. So that's very much the focus. And to be honest with you, the biggest thing that came out of the MIT study in September 2014 is that essentially those ISRU units that we need, that technology that we need, MIT is essentially saying that we're not there yet to be self-sufficient, and it's true. We don't have ways to grow all of our own food. So I suppose the idea is we start there trying to be as self-sufficient as we can, and as we move along, we'll become more and more self-sufficient once we know more about living on Mars.
Speaking of, Dutta asks, are you already vegetarian, and are you okay with never eating meat again? That's a real thing, right? I mean,
it is a real thing. I've gone the other way, where I
all of the meat now.
I'm binging
as
meat.
much as I can. I know it's going to be a challenge. I know that going vegetarian is going to be a challenge for me. It's not something I have to face just yet, and so I am enjoying as much bacon as I can. The research that Stodge is doing at the moment for her graduate certificate through the University of South Australia is essentially looking at growing plants on Mars. And one of the ones that we talked about when we were setting up her grad cert was, I think it's called dulse. It's a particular species of Japanese seaweed that when you fry it, tastes just like bacon.
I was going to ask you if you heard about that. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
supposed to be a seaweed that it actually also, it doesn't, it's not the same color, but it has like the same kind of waviness to it in the whole nine. But it's a seaweed that, yeah, when you fry it, it tastes like bacon.
I normally hate seaweed, but I'd be willing to try that.
I
Yeah,
know.
me too.
Yeah, I'm all
It's
over
a
that. We
lot
need to
of
figure that out.
research being done by Bill Gates at the moment with regard to egg replacement as well. So developing powders and things like that, so that you can still make omelettes. We're not necessarily going to have little pigs growing on trees or anything like that, but I mean there's ways around this, and it's not going to be a lot of fun. But to be honest with you, some of the foods that I ate in the military, it will be much easier than that was.
Have you ever had Soylent?
Soylent?
Soylent. Have you ever had Soylent?
I haven't tried Soylent yet, but I've heard a lot about it.
Everyone here but Ben has.
Yeah. I'm not going to try it. All right. You want to take the next one? Who wants to take the next one?
I don't know the
I got it.
definition of ISRU.
Oh, all right. So, Practic Swayze Christmas.
In situ
Patrick.
resource utilization.
Patrick Swayze Christmas.
That's what I said. Patrick Swayze Christmas.
That's not what you said, but go on.
What'd I say?
It doesn't matter. Go
All right.
on.
Question: does Mars One have any partnerships with resource recovery or in situ resource utilization companies, and/or are they willing to fund research?
So they have already been looking at research. One of the sort of less well-publicised papers that have come out as part of Mars One's work is with Paragon Space Development Corporation. They're essentially the folks that did the design study for the life support systems that we need. And the beautiful thing that's come out of all of that is each individual life support unit that we're talking about is weighing in at about 7.5 tonne, and that will be the heaviest component that we need to land on Mars. So it's a good sign if SpaceX is talking about being able to land 10-tonne Dragons on the surface of Mars. there's a potential there that the landing technologies have moved far enough forward with the supersonic retro rocket propulsion that being able to get a 7.5-ton life support unit on the surface of Mars is a feasible thing. So they are looking at that, and that life support unit is essentially an integrated ISRU as well. So they're looking at essentially landing a rover with a bucket on the front of it, scoops up regolith, dumps it into this oven, and heats the water up. So part of what I'm doing with ISU in Israel this year is actually looking at what mining technologies are best suited. Because if we find solid chunks of ice on Mars, that is potentially more difficult to mine than it is actually trying to find sort of water and ice that's frozen in the soil loosely. So looking at what kind of ISRU units that we're talking about, Mars One seems to be on the right track with what they've done with Paragon.
So, Destructor 1701, I'm going to expand on this question, I think, a little bit. It says, if funds are an issue and SpaceX have hardware in work and a reputation for bang for your buck, why is Mars One not pursuing SpaceX more aggressively? Lockheed isn't even exactly known for being cheap. Ugh, I cannot speak today. But expanding on that, you know, you talk about retro propulsion. Lockheed has built retro propulsion and landers and whatnot that go to Mars, small scale. But one could make the argument that for large scale retro propulsion and actually doing retro prop for humans, SpaceX is ahead of the entire pack already, and Lockheed has nothing on the table for any of that. And so it's weird that Mars One is targeting the more expensive but more stagnant Lockheed Martin as opposed to the more cost effective and more forward looking SpaceX. That's not a question; it's a statement.
I don't know the decision-making process on this. Personally, I would love to see SpaceX and Mars One work together because ultimately, I think they've got the same goal. SpaceX is talking about bringing people back. Mars One wants to leave them there, but ultimately, it's about colonizing Mars. So, I think that makes sense to me that the two would be working together. There's been a few discussions about how if Mars One sort of fell apart or they couldn't get funding to go any further or whatever, but they still managed to train 24 people as astronauts, you would then potentially have 24 commercial astronauts essentially free on the marketplace that could go and work for SpaceX, that could go and fly some of these missions. So there's lots of different options. I don't know why they're talking to Lockheed Martin. I suspect, and this is purely conjecture, I suspect what it is Elon has sort of said, yeah, we'll sell you stuff if you've got the money, and Mars One doesn't have the money right now. Whereas Lockheed Martin is more open to chatting to Mars One with the potential for business, whereas SpaceX have just sort of gone, yeah, we'll sell you a Dragon if you want to buy a Dragon.
I just don't see... I've yet to see where Mars One is going to get the money, right? There's a lot of talk of things, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so you talk about how you're about the people, and so I think this question from To Wicked is relevant. He said, how can you make certain that you don't send a psychopath or a sociopath to commit mass murder on Mars?
So this is going to sound very flippant, but you can't. You really can't. Without delving into some of the checkered pasts with NASA, there's been mistakes made.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately what it is about stretching the whole process out. It's great that we're looking at 10 years' time. I'm essentially glad that we've had the delays because we're going to need that time to really filter people out. Again, without going into details, we saw issues on high seas. I've seen issues in all sorts of different places. Every time we run an ISU course, you get 30 to 35 highly intelligent people working in a high-stress environment. They're all very passionate about space, and there's always a few that just don't fit. They're just not part of the team.
It's hard with really intelligent people because they all think their answer's right, even when they're diametrically opposed. Yeah.
So again, my role with a lot of that is trying to smooth that stuff over, trying to mitigate the damage that some of those folks can do. You would hope that after 10 years and sending a very small group of 4 that you would get a group that fits together perfectly. In the same way that crews that are going to the ISS, they work together for years and years before they launch together. It's that same sort of concept. So there's no way to guarantee it, but we're definitely getting much better at filtering them out.
So does that basically require a mixed gender crew then?
So we've always talked about 2 and 2. It's always been about 2 men and 2 women. That's been on the plate right from the start. I still don't understand, NASA's just started the Hera mission, and they're essentially looking at how people work together in a small environment for a month. The last crew, I think, was all female. The current crew is all male, and they've sort of said, oh, we've done that because that was just the way people applied. I personally would have forced it so there would have been equal gender balance, because sending all male crews to me doesn't, all like single sex crews doesn't make any sense to me at all. You put 4 guys together living on the surface of Mars and tell them they're never coming back and they'll kill each other after a month. You do the same thing with 4 women and they'll kill each other after a month, because there's no balance. There's no one to rein in the testosterone. There's no one to rein in any of the aggression or the issues. So, yeah.
Fair? All right. Want to take some of the comments?
So it was mentioned in the chat room, although it didn't get over to the TMRO host, that sometimes people have a lot of confusion surrounding not just SpaceX's involvement with Mars One, but that if SpaceX is in fact Mars One, have you run into anything along those lines?
Wait, people think
No,
that
that's
SpaceX
awesome,
is
though.
Mars?
Or Mars One is SpaceX? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well,
That's
just like in the same way, I imagine that a lot of times people think that SpaceX is run by Richard Branson.
Or that whenever you see a Falcon launch, it's a NASA flight? One of
Sure,
those,
anything
same-
along
same
those
kind of
lines. There's
concept?
always a lot of the confusion, just in general.
I get
Yeah.
a lot of confusion between Mars One and NASA.
Yeah.
That comes up all the time, and I have to really clarify that Mars One is an international not-for-profit organisation and NASA is a US government agency. People don't seem to process that. But I haven't heard the SpaceX confusion before. That's an interesting one.
Neither did I. That's a new one for
Yeah,
me.
no, the chat room said that they heard that a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
All right.
it was interesting. Minnie Stoge, of course, wants to know what kids think of Mars One.
Who
Well,
cares?
she
They're
knows.
kids. They can't vote.
But
Wow.
they love it. I don't think they care about Mars One itself. Kids seem to be in love with the concept of exploring space. And it's not good enough to just sort of go and come back. Kids want to explore. They want to go to the moon. They want to go to Mars. They want to go further. And I think that's something that maybe gets drummed out of us as we get older. It's unreasonable to think that you would go and explore space or go to other planets. Like, you're told over and over again that, that's not reasonable, and you should grow up and let that go. And I love being able to go and talk to kids and sort of say, hey, I was told I couldn't, and now I have an opportunity that maybe I can. And that's a really awesome thing to be able to do.
Well, I mean, let's be clear. It isn't reasonable, but that's okay. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, none of
That's
this stuff
okay.
is reasonable. But
I'll
that's
pay that.
so what? So what? It's not reasonable. That just makes it more fun.
So you've probably touched on something that I talk about in my shows again, but I absolutely love the quote from Bertrand Russell, the old Irish poet. Basically says, all progress relies on the unreasonable man. You go out and you do these stupid things, and if you're doing it for the highest and best interests of humanity, even if it all goes horribly wrong, you're still doing good at the same time.
I agree. You look at Mars One or anyone else just habitating a dead planet. I mean, there's nothing there. It's going to be hard. People are going to die. People will die.
Yep.
I mean, that's the cold, harsh reality of it. It is an unreasonable thing to do. We have plenty of problems here on Earth we could be spending money on. It is a very unreasonable request, but in the long term, it is something that will be beneficial for all of humanity in that we'll have a backup for our species, first and foremost, and there will be incredible technologies built out of all of this. Now, I know I'm not a huge fan of spin-off stuff, but there will be incredible stuff that is built out of this, and an entire economy that doesn't even exist today, a space-based economy that we will be able to live and work in. It will open up incredible jobs, incredible opportunities that we can't even dream of today. But we have to actually be unreasonable and be willing to go to the planet first. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. All right. Furk app.
For keep?
For keep? Question. Mars One had a big start. How can it be invigorated again?
So Mars One has gone through a couple of different cycles. They did have a really big start, that's right. We had another massive influx when they reduced the group down to 1,058 in the end of 2013. We saw another spike when they essentially announced the 100. We'll have another spike when we go through that next round. It's something the media love, but they're always looking for something new. It's not good enough to just turn around and go, oh, I'm one of 100 people shortlisted to the first human mission to Mars, which is the way it's usually sold. I'll still get interviews, but the real invigoration happens when those major events occur. Everyone went crazy when SpaceX landed on the barge. And there's all of a sudden interest in all these people who'd never heard of it before are suddenly getting involved and interested. And it's the same thing with what we're doing. You need these major events to reinvigorate. So there's always stuff going on in the background. But yeah, the major public interest only occurs around major events.
Dutta asks, how far into the mission would you expect the colonization part of colonization to begin? In other words, when do you make children?
I'm not responsible enough to have kids on this planet, much less another one. So,
when would the colonists be expected to start making babies?
Are you
blushing?
Gently.
Did we make you blush?
No, what it is I talk about it in my shows quite a bit. Everyone talks about the baby question. It always comes up when I do school visits, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I am blushing. It's even if I wasn't applying for a one-way mission to Mars, it wouldn't be something that I would be interested in. I'm much more interested in talking to other people's kids than trying to raise one of my own. But the question always comes up. Everyone always discusses it. Mars One has never set anything firm about it. But there have been very vague discussions that maybe Crew 5, 6, or 7, there might be enough evidence at that point that we know that our physiology could actually handle it. Most of the experiments we've seen in terms of fertilization, in terms of rat embryo growth and those sort of things on the International Space Station have shown us that we need gravity for everything to develop properly. So we don't know if 1/3 gravity is actually enough for our physiology to develop properly.
Mini Stoge brings up a good point, which is the first cruise will also most likely be sterile, right? You're going to be out, you're going to be bombarded with radiation.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I'm fine with that.
All right, what else have we got here? Anything else in the main chat room?
I'm still going through a lot of things.
All right.
There was a lot of stuff there.
Have you been to the Mars One headquarters, and how impressed were you, if you were?
So again, Mars One's a startup. So the Mars One headquarters is basically a hired space in a commercial district in Amsterdam. Amersfoort, so just outside Amsterdam. You're talking about, well, Bas is usually flying around talking to investors. Arno Wielders, who's Mars One's chief technical officer, works at the ESA facility that's just outside of Amsterdam as well. And Suzanne, who handles most of the PR, I believe she's the one who's mainly at the desk. So there's not really much of a headquarters to see because they're looking at contracting all the work out. It's really just coordination. So the chief medical officer, Norbert Kraft, is based in San Diego because he works for NASA on selecting crews. So all these people are kind of involved with, again, a startup, and they're working externally. So it's not really a bricks and mortar kind of organisation.
Little work from home action. All right, 3 more questions. What?
Nothing.
3 more questions. All right. This one comes from Citizen 76366. And by the way, citizens, you can add your own name in the room. You don't have to be
Just
a
a
citizen.
reminder.
As a reminder, if you log in next time. This means reminder when I make this hand movement. Yeah, that's pretty much that hand movement. Yeah, that one. If Elon could get the price down to $500,000, would you pay to go that way?
Yeah, sure. In a heartbeat. If it was more than that, then I'd look at ways to raise that money. I'm not like I can apply to Mars One because Mars One don't care where you come from. They're an international organisation, and there was no restrictions on nationality. The reality is that I can't apply to be a NASA astronaut unless I become an American citizen. I can't apply to the Japanese Space Agency, or I can apply to the Canadian, but the reality is the Canadians have only selected astronauts that are Canadian-born, French-speaking since the start of the agency. So Mars One's the only sort of game in town for me as someone who is born in a country that doesn't have a space agency.
Do you think you can create enough noise and get enough people behind you to change the rules in Australia so that you could actually create your own space program? Is that something you've ever looked at? I mean, you were clearly educated on the topic. I mean,
I've been pushing for that since this all started. Ever since I started researching Mars One, the actual show itself that I was writing, the first comedy show I was writing, was going to be quite angry. It was angry at us as a species for not having tried to go further, and it was angry at Australia for not seeing the potential that space has. I was frustrated and angry that because of which patch of dirt I was born on, I couldn't go to space. That's pretty much what it boiled down to. And so the show was very angry about all of that. I've continued to push that. As I've gotten more and more involved in what space industry we have in Australia, I've just started to discover that we have some very long-standing political walls stopping it. And you can push, you can fight. This sounds awful, but sometimes you have to wait for the dinosaurs to die out.
it does, but you still need to start that fight sometime, right? You don't want to wait for them to die out and then start the conversation.
No,
Don't you already want to have that momentum so that when they do kind of leave, you can go, okay, well, good, here we go, right? I mean, have you started that push and any of that momentum?
That is very much on the agenda. And Australia is going to be put in a very awkward situation next year because we're actually hosting the International Aeronautical Congress in Adelaide. So we're going to be having astronauts coming in from all over the world. We're going to have all these space industry people from all over the world coming to Adelaide in September 2017. And everyone's going to be asking, how can you host the International Aeronautical Congress and not have a space agency? So we're going to be put in a very awkward situation politically in about 18 months' time or less because no one has a real answer for it.
But it's
no
not continued pressure. It's only a minor, it's a little sting. It's a bite for just a moment, and then it goes away. Don't you need continued pressure? I mean, that's like a bug bite. Okay, great. You need to create a rash, right? Something that just will not go away. And like, fine, I will treat this. We'll deal with this, right? Something like that. I mean, I'm not saying you personally should do it, but I'm also saying, why not you personally?
If I'm brutally honest about all of this, there are positions at certain US aerospace organisations and companies that I could apply for and be working at. I could do that. Part of what fits in with Mars One for me is that I'm in a position where I'm an Australian, mostly living in Australia, talking to Australian kids and saying, hey, why don't we have a space agency? And asking the kids, because the kids then ask the parents. The parents often don't have an answer. Parents start to ask that as well, and the parents are the ones who vote. So part of the reason why I'm staying in Australia and sort of battling it out and doing it tougher than I probably need to is because it's a way for me to campaign for space in Australia. Because I think it's disgusting that I could grow up and be told that I can't work in the space industry, and it took a crazy Dutchman offering a one-way trip to Mars before I realised that actually all the barriers are paper walls, and it's just people that are turning around and saying you can't do this.
It annoys me greatly that you've got such a great place to launch from and you can't launch from there. I mean, it is better, geographically better than launching from Cape Canaveral, and you're going right over water. You're right by the equator. It blows my mind that you cannot.
So Australia's
launch.
been invited to the European Space Agency 3 times. We rejected it twice. We didn't even have the dignity to reply the third time round. We've had launch facilities. We still maintain active ranges at Woomera, where Defence basically do all their own missile testing. But in terms of developing that so that we could launch rockets for commercial programs, for research, for any of that, Australia's not interested. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. The Australian federal government is not interested.
I think that anyone interested in space that's an Australian citizen, you, Stoge, there's actually, I'm not going to name other people that haven't already been named on the show, but there are, I know for a fact there are more. All need to get together and push for change. You mentioned, talking to children. That is a good start, but it is simply a start. There needs to be more. In my opinion, there needs to be more. I can only do so much as a U.S. citizen, but I see all of these great Australians who love and want space, and you're in this perfect geographic location for it. And I do not understand why you don't do it. I mean, I do, I get it, but I don't. But I do, but I don't.
There's an immense level of frustration, and it's built up. It is building up for me at the moment. It has been for the last 12 months. With the Mars 1 delays, with a whole raft of different things, of me sort of going, why don't I just go? Why don't I just give up on trying to make a difference in Australia and just go? Because I know I can do more for space generally by cutting Australia loose, by following the path that so many other Australians have, really talented, highly intelligent people who get fed up with not having any job opportunities, being stuffed around with research or being stuffed around just generally, because we have this unspoken agreement that we won't develop launch services, that we won't. Australia doesn't do space. And there's so many of us that are desperately trying to change that conversation. And Stoge is a big one for it. I'm a big one for it. And the best way that I can be an advocate for that, strangely enough, is by applying to Mars 1. Because it means that the media love it. They latch onto it. They go, this crazy ginger leprechaun has signed up for a one-way mission to Mars, and we want to talk to him about it. And it gives me an avenue to talk about, well, I signed up because Australia doesn't have a space agency.
It's weird that Australia doesn't have a space agency. On that
Insane.
note, I think we're coming to an end. Do you guys have any last comments?
All good.
You good? Any final comments for the viewers of tomorrow?
Thank you very much for having me, folks.
Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday. I know it's weird. What time is it over there?
I'm in Washington. I'm in DC at the moment for the Humans to Mars conference. So it's like 7 o'clock at night.
So it's fine. You're fine then. All right. I should have known that because your image was right side up.
Sure.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone so much for watching. We'll see you next week. I won't, but they will.
Yeah.
But I won't, but they will. See you guys.